Hello, MotoAmerica fans. This is Paul Carruthers, and I'm joined as always by Sean Bice. And this is our weekly MotoAmerica podcast, Off Track with Carruthers and Bice. Man, Sean, I got the winter blues. I feel like have you ever had like you get a little cold, but you like refuse to believe that you have it, so you just try to ignore the fact that you have it, and then you think you don't have it, and then the next day you realize you still have it, and then the next day you try not to have it, and then the next day you feel like you have it again.
I think I know what you mean. Yeah, you try to will it out of you. You're like, I think I have something coming on. You almost sense it before you even get the symptoms. And then you're like, yeah, I guess that's what it is. All right. So yeah, that's hard. That's
Yeah, you start
especially.
counting vitamins, you think you got it saved, and then the next day you're like, ah. I rode bicycles yesterday thinking I was going to be fine. And sometimes you feel like you could sweat it out, but I don't know if that's the case. But I just generally try to do what, if my body feels like I can do it, then I try and do it. And if not, then I just don't. So I'm kind
Yeah.
of going back and forth with this thing. It's like, yeah, it's a little back and forth game I'm playing with it.
Didn't it feel like, I bet you it didn't feel like this to you, but maybe so. But it felt like to me at the end of the season, right after Barber, it felt like, oh, then suddenly it's fall and it's cold. It's kind of cooler. And it's
Mhm.
like, it's over. I mean, it's like our season ends right about the time that the season of summer or fall, nice weather ends around here anyway. But do you get that feeling out there too? Does it feel like it kind of goes into a different area?
Yeah, it's just kind of different here because initially we get just the air feels a little different, but it still could be like 75, 80 degrees. But like this week it's like cloudy and I wore shorts to the grocery store yesterday and kind of regretted it. So it's kind of that it's that borderline for us where it's, people here don't know what to do if they can't wear shorts, right?
Oh my God, you should have seen Speak. You're going to love this, and you're not going to be surprised. I was going into a Sheets last night, and when I was walking in, it was so damn cold. And I saw some guy wearing shorts, and I'm like, what are you doing? That is insane. It's definitely too cold for shorts here, but some of these guys just wear them year round. They don't care. It's
Yeah, I go as long as I can because it's just well, working at home now, it's easy. You just get up and throw some shorts on and you're good to go and start work.
yeah,
And you kind of forget if it's chilly outside or not. But I
yeah,
can't complain about weather where I live, so
yeah,
I
yeah,
better
exactly.
stop. I'll get emails and people saying, "Shut up about the weather, you idiot."
It's kind of I just we can't help it. We're in such different parts of the country in terms of weather. No matter what time of year it is, it's always interesting to hear what's going on there versus here. So
You know what I want to hear? I want to know who's riding that freaking Ducati.
I know. It's like rumors running rampant
It's
right
like the missing piece, and I so badly want. I honestly, I don't care who it is. I just want somebody that can do the bike justice and make our races at the front like they were last year, if not even closer. Having Cameron Bobier is going to be a big help. But man, we just need somebody on that Ducati that can also run at the front. And I'm hoping. I don't know. It's kind of I'm torn. I just want the best person. I'd like that to be an American
yeah.
because it's like they talk all the time like, oh, the bike doesn't work well with Ducati with Dunlops. It's like, well, everybody you bring over here to ride it is also not used to riding the Dunlops. So is it the bike doesn't work well with the Dunlops, or the guy's not used to the Dunlops and it's not working with the Duke? You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
so maybe an American that's like, okay, forget about the tires. I mean, this is what I ride, and let's just go make the bike work or whatever. But I just don't know who that's going to be.
Yeah.
I'm hearing everything from Josh Herron to PJ Jacobson to Chaz Davies to, I'm just hearing all these names. I just want it to be settled so we can get started and promote whoever it is, because it's obviously a good bike and it's a good team, and you just need that thing up front.
Yeah, I mean, whatever happened to Lorenzo Zanetti? I mean, he did well and won a race in Indy, and felt upset that they put Baz on the bike instead of him. I don't even know if he's still a test rider for Ducati, but I mean, the kid did well. Or he's older now. I shouldn't say kid, but he's still, he had some prowess there. I wonder if he's even an option.
Yeah, I follow him on social media, and he
Oh, okay.
he races like in the Italian Championship and wins, and so he's still very active. I don't know what the situation is there. Maybe it's just not that that big name that they're looking for. But man, the longer it goes, the harder it gets. But we'll have to see what happens with that. Well, anyway, let's get started with today's guest. I know he's one of your favorites. He's always one of my favorites. He's a good kid. We've had him since the beginning of time, it seems like, and he's probably still only 17 or something. But our guest today is Cory Ventura. Cory was it was kind of a strange year for him. He started obviously in Twins Cup, in the REV'IT Twins Cup Championship, and he ended up sixth. But it was really up and down. But it's funny, and looking at the results, he had 3 podium finishes, and the only time he was on the podium was when he actually won races. So it was almost like when they got things right, he was really good. And then when they didn't get things right, then things went backwards a little bit for him. But he ended up 6th in the championship, like I said, with 3 wins. Then also he showed that he's perfectly capable of riding a Supersport bike at the front of a Supersport pack, because he jumped in at Laguna Seca as a fill-in rider for Sam Lochoff on the Vision Wheel M4 Suzuki team. And he finished 8th and 5th in the 2 races at Laguna, and then rode the bike for a total of 6 races, and his best finish was a 4th at Brainerd. But it was kind of an odd year, because when I looked at the results, I'm like, holy crap, Cory did really well at times. But there was times when there were non-finishes, et cetera, that kind of makes you think, like, you kind of forget about him. But I think his results on the Supersport bike really showed that, like, he belongs in that class.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, he definitely does. And you know, one of the things I was realizing too, Paul, and when we get him on, we'll talk about this, but I'm amazed that he's only 20 years old. Seems like he's been racing for 30 years or something, even though I know he's still a fresh-faced kid. But I was like, oh my God, he doesn't turn 21 till February. So it's like he's still got a long career in front of him after all he's done. I mean, I guess because he's been in MotoAmerica for a while, although he was away from it for a while and raced in AFM. I know he raced that Kawasaki and went into Laguna there a couple of years ago and did great on that bike too. So he's got some super sport prowesses as well. There's no doubt about it. But it's amazing he's still as young as he is, don't you think?
Well, yeah, but we had him when he was 14, I would imagine. So
right, that's
yeah,
right.
Yeah, it's funny to watch these kids grow up and see what they do, and it's fun. He's also one of those kids that, like, I don't know how to say this, but he still always does better than I'm expecting him to do, because I just don't see him enough. And then all of a sudden he shows up, and like when he showed up at Laguna to ride the Supersport bike, he's like running at the front. I'm like, oh shit, that's Cory, like that's what we thought he was going to be doing all along. But it's kind of, he's had some up and downs and some rough patches. But anyway, why don't we bring him in and let him have a chat with us, Sean?
Yeah, let's bring him in. Hey, Cory.
Howdy, everyone.
How are you, howdy boy?
I'm doing great.
Hey, Cory, wait, guys, we interrupt this program for breaking news. Ladies and gentlemen, we have an announcement from Cory Ventura. Cory, what's going on with you? You got anything to tell us about today?
Oh, yeah. So I have this amazing news. I moved to Kansas City. I'm changing my life up, doing a bunch of different things, but I'm signed to race with Disrupt Racing and Supersport, and I'm super excited to get back up into the Supersport class and show everyone what I can do.
Well, there you go.
Oh, good news. So you're in Kansas City, but that doesn't have anything to do with Disrupt Racing. Well, let's get to the Kansas City part, but we don't want to bury the lead here. Okay, so you're going to be racing in Supersport for Disrupt Racing. Now, I want to ask you a question about something. I kind of knew about this a little bit ahead of the game, because I'm just saying, when I heard about Kayla Yaakov a little bit before that was announced, I thought, oh, it's going to be Kayla and Cory, teammates in Twins Cup. And then I was told by that team, not so fast, and they didn't say what was going on. And then I found out later. I thought, was there any point you were going to be her teammate, or did you make a decision? Was it your decision to say, hey, I want to race Supersport, or how did it come about that you switched teams into Supersport?
Yeah, it was a little bit of a complicated process. I knew Kayla was going to come race with MP13 a little earlier on, and I was like, that would be awesome. She is a amazing up and coming talent, and Melissa runs a great program as well, and I thought it would be an awesome thing. Coming out of the Twins Cup year, you guys were talking about, I had a pretty tough year, some ups and downs throughout the year. When we got going, it was good, and we had a lot of rough weekends. Some of it was a new class for me. I just couldn't quite get my stride in together at the beginning of the year. I want to say, like, within the first 5 races, I scored a total of like 15 or 17 points or something like that. It was absolutely bizarre. Left Melissa and I scratching our heads, and the Twins Cup bike is a little different, a little bit more of a budget built bike compared to a super sport bike, and I struggled with the way I was trying to ride it. And, I took all this into consideration. I rode the Vision Wheel M4 Suzuki for 6 races, and it like re-sparked my confidence a little bit to help me with the R7 program quite get me going back with that. But as soon as I jumped on the super sport bike, and I felt like, for a bike I've never seen before, I jumped in there and started gathering my momentum quickly. And I'm like, okay, this is a little bit more at home. And at the end of the year, I sat down and I'm like, all right, what do I want to do? And, I love Josh and Melissa so much. Like, I lived with them all year, traveling around in the RV. And my plan was to continue racing with them, and it ended up just not quite working out for us.
Yeah, and I want to put an emphasis on that, Cory, because as you mentioned, you've lived with them. I mean, you really are family to Josh and Melissa, and Hawk and Bretley as well. You're part of that family, and I'm sure you still are. And it makes sense about super sport. So that there's no hard feelings there. I mean, you've kind of worked with them off and on throughout your career. There's nothing saying that you may not work with them again in the future, right? I mean, everything's all good with them. Is that correct?
For sure. Always, like, there's an open door for me at all times to go down there. And like you said, they're family, and Hawk's birthday was just a couple days ago. And I was just on the phone with them yesterday before, and we were chatting about what's going on and the toys that Hawk got and everything. And it's just, they're my people. And they also don't want to hold me back from any possibilities, and they have the Twins Cup program right now, and that's their focus.
Well, you rode the bikes, like you said, you rode both bikes last year. You obviously was on the Suzuki team was on the Suzuki. What did it help you to ride 2 classes, or was it confusing?
At first, I feel like it helped me a little bit, like being at Laguna. Some of it was positive, some of it was negative. But as I started riding the bikes more and more, and I had a really tough weekend in Pittsburgh, I got myself all turned around, and it, like, no matter what I did on either bike, it was all negatives. And I had to just go back to the drawing board and just, okay, rebuild from step one. And just, I had to rebuild myself as a rider, because both bikes, you have to ride them completely different. And I struggled even with, on the 750, I feel like I never produced my best results on that bike. I was still trying to figure it out, and I feel like I never rode the same bike twice. Whenever I got on it, we were always trying something a little different, and it's a new bike. We're looking for data, and it was a great opportunity for the Vision Wheel Suzuki team to have me in there, because I wasn't in the championship or anything. They could just throw whatever at me and just see if it worked or not. But jumping on the R7 and then jumping on that thing was 2 different worlds.
Mm-hmm. Now you'll be back on a Suzuki 750 for the new team.
Yes, I will be.
So obviously you're going to concentrate on the Supersport Championship. If looking at the Supersport Championship right now, depending on obviously what Josh Herron does or doesn't do, that's a championship that somebody like you goes into and thinks, I got a chance of running at the front in this thing, and I've got a chance of challenging for the championship. Is that accurate?
That's always the goal, right? And for sure, I think that's very accurate. It's going to be a lot of competition. Like Tyler's riding extremely well. I'm not sure what his plans are quite yet, but I think he is going to be super strong. Like it's a very respectable class. Everyone's super strong. Rocco showed some amazing things this year, and yeah, and I want to be right up there with those guys. I'm I want to do it with some proper testing and come into it as my main focus rather than, all right, this is just something I'm doing besides racing my twin, because the twin was still the focus when I was racing the Vision Wheel Suzuki bike.
Right. But obviously having those rides on that 600 last year or 750 last year in Supersport, I mean, that you had to have gained some confidence from that to realize like, yeah, I can run in the top 5 in this class right now.
For sure. For sure. Even it was kind of funny. At one moment, I was riding the Suzuki, and I ended up qualifying like 10th on the Twins Cup bike, and I qualified 5th or something on the 750. I'm sitting there scratching my head. I'm like, I don't understand what's going on here. But yeah, it definitely helped in a lot of different ways, and just more seat time, just getting my head out of my butt, kind of to say, just to kind of go figure things out.
Cory, I want to ask you about this super sport class because, I've paid a lot of attention to it. I've written some stories on it. This whole thing with super sport next generation, and the fact that it really balanced out so well last year. It seems like that 750 is an absolute weapon, but it's not like dominant. Clearly didn't win the championship, but it was up there quite a bit. It's a good bike to ride. You've actually raced. So you've raced a Yamaha R6, you raced a ZX6R. I think it was a 636. That was when you won those races at Laguna, right? A couple of years ago.
I didn't win. I got a pair of podiums.
Oh, sorry. You were on the podium and it felt like you won. I guess.
Yeah. I mean, when to me, I felt like a superhero.
Yeah, I remember how happy we were for you. I just elevated it right to the number 1. Okay, but anyway, okay, my point though, you've ridden an R6, you've ridden a 636, you've ridden a 750, GSXR 750. Obviously, you haven't ridden them back to back close together, but can you tell anything from those bikes? Like, what does the Kawasaki do better? Or what does that 750 do better? What does the R6 do better? Can you comment on that at all?
For sure. Like, just out of experience from what I felt, the R6 is a little bit more faint. It was last time I rode one of those was in 2019. It was my rookie season. I crashed that thing more than I was on it. Honest with you, but the R6 just has such a good chassis underneath it, and you can kind of do whatever to it besides what I was doing to it, and get around the track pretty well. And just a good solid platform. And watching Rocco on it a bit this year, I can see things that I felt racing on it, and I think it's another amazing platform. Like, they all even out very good. The Kawasaki was a little bit harder to ride than the R6 and the 750, I would say. But it's when you get going on that thing, you just get into a groove of just being able to put down good, consistent, solid laps, and it just worked out very, very well. Good bike for not having to put a whole lot of money into it, and really having to expand on your budget to make it go around. The 750, on the other hand, was completely different than both the R6 and the ZX6 to me. The chassis sits a little bit more neutral, I would say. So you have to ride the front a lot harder, and you can really attack the corners with it. Like, every race I was at racing with the Vision Wheel Suzuki, I couldn't ever wrap my head around being on the brakes for so long, getting the bike to point itself in the right direction, and then being able to accelerate. I would always want to pick the throttle up coming into the corner, like I have with everything else. With the R6 and the ZX6, if I did what I was doing on the 750, I'd be crashing before I'd even be able to pick up the throttle.
Man, Cory, I think Paul and I are salivating over here because I'll tell you, I for one have been wanting to hear some of that kind of analysis of the bikes for a long time, and I've been wondering on that 750. Does it feel like you raced 3 rounds, 6 races on that? You podiumed you had 3 top 5s. Sorry, 3 top 5 finishes out of 6 races, which is pretty darn good. And the bike, is it when you twist the throttle on that, you feel that it's a 750 or not really?
Not really. It has a lot of torque. I struggled with the RPM range. They chop the RPMs quite a bit. So half the time on the straightaways, I was just sitting on the limiter. Like, I don't understand why it's not going. But no, it's an interesting setup. Coming from the twin, it didn't feel so weird to me because the twin also red lines at about 12,000 RPM and it's all torque. But the 750 did pull pretty hard coming off of the corners compared to let's say the R6 or even when I was racing with Josh's Ducati. But with the 750, it had its disadvantages. I felt like we were losing quite a bit on the top end, as well as like making those gear shifts. The gearbox was a big struggle for me, and we'd lose a little bit on straight line speed and just flowing with the 750. I can say that the 750 is really hard to put good consistent laps together.
So I was talking to your team owner of Disrupt Racing, Jesse Wilke, yesterday about this, and we got to talking about last year and how they had a 750 and a 600, and he said, "Yeah, we're still going to have that, and we're still going to use it." He said, "We're gonna see there may be some tracks where that 600 might do better, so we're going to give Cory an option, or with the teams consulting on it to figure out which one he might want to do." Do you foresee any track where you might want to consider the 600 over the 750? That seems odd to me.
Some tracks flow very well. Like Laguna would be a one right off the bat for me. But I can say I did race that 600 in race 1 at Brainerd. I'd never seen the bike before. They pulled it out of the rig because I smashed the 750 flat in Q2, and that was all that they had available, and I ended up being able to race it. Never seen the motorcycle before. I believe it was equivalent to what SDK raced it on last year, and I ended up going significantly faster on the 600 than I did on the 750. The GSR 600 is definitely an amazing platform. I mean, the bike's been around for so long and it's so developed. So it's the first year with the 750, and I feel like putting in some proper time and development into it and seeing the improvements this next year, it's going to be hard to say which is going to be better. I'm a big part of just sticking with what you have and just keep moving forward with it. But I do like the 600s. It's what I'm a little bit more used to at this moment in time. And it's possible, like I would pull it out maybe at Laguna. Brainerd was a really good track for it. Maybe at Pittsburgh, but yeah.
All right. Stepping away from the motorcycle part for a minute. You're in Kansas City. Why in the hell are you in Kansas City?
I know it's crazy.
Does your bicycle have snow chains, or what are you going to do there?
Yeah, I put some fat tires on it and riding down the middle of the road. People are honking and waving at me. They're like, "What are you doing?" Training for MotoAmerica. Yeah, Cali boy wants to change it up a little bit. I've been in California my whole life, and I think I'm tired of those people. I wanted to come out to the Midwest and hang out with my girlfriend and get some of this little bit more laid back life. California just wasn't doing it for me anymore. I got bored of it.
So is her family there, or what's the connection?
Yeah, she's born and raised here, and I heard that there's some really badass mountain biking trails, and I'm like, all right, I'm in.
Yeah, you'll get to see those in about June.
Like I said, I got those snow tires. I'm golden. I got a heated best. And, when it's about 15 degrees outside, it's a little bit brisk on the face. But, when I come back out to California to do some training with the Bobiers, I'm gonna be like, dude, it's 40 degrees outside. I'm sweating. Why do you need all this inner gear?
So Cory, this is another thing that Jesse told us, Jesse Wilka. He has a company called Infinity Fall Protection, and one of his customers is actually Harley Davidson. And he was telling me, he had told us a little bit about this regarding Hayden Gillen, the announcement that was made last week, who obviously is going to be your teammate on the Superbike. But at any rate, he is going to do some stuff with Jesse during this off season. And Jesse told me you are too. Basically, he's going to bring you into the payroll of his company. And I think he said you're actually going to go and do some work at Harley Davidson. So number one, is that true? Number two, are you and your girlfriend going to have to move from Kansas City to Milwaukee, Wisconsin?
Yeah, that is true. No, my girlfriend's staying here. She's an ICU nurse. She's tied down to that. But yeah, I'm going to jump up there, and yeah, I'm ready to do some work. Us racers, we always need a little bit of extra money, and, in between training, and I'd like to spend some time with Jesse and just the team and get to understand what's all going on. I think it'd be a great opportunity to spend some more time with them and get to know how everything works.
So you're going to be, as I mentioned, a teammate of Hayden Gillen. How well do you know Hayden? And we think highly of him, obviously. He's a terrific guy, and he's done well for that team. So what do you think about having him for your teammate?
I think it's absolutely awesome. I know Hayden pretty well. When I first was racing with Melissa on MP13 Racing in 2018, Hayden was actually living in their condo in Oceanside. So we would always go ride bicycles together. We had a whole group of guys, including Jake Lewis, JD, Hayden was in there. And we'd always go pedal our bikes, hang out, and it was absolutely awesome. And Hayden is an awesome person. I also went out to Owensboro, Kentucky for 2 weeks with Gage Reese and hung out with the Rat Pack there. And Hayden let me borrow some stuff. I didn't have all my moto stuff and everything, and he helped me out in a pinch. And Hayden and I are cool. It's always someone that I love seeing at the track and always saying hi and just catch up real quick. It's always one of those guys that I never talk to enough. And hopefully I'll be spending a lot more time with him this year.
Yeah, that's terrific. And I mean, knowing going into the season that you're, have this full season on Supersport. So there's one thing that's interesting this year, and it's the fact that we've got 2 races. This is not counting the Daytona 200, but we've got a race at Barber and we've got a race at Laguna Seca that are both going to involve pit stops. I don't think you've ever been to Daytona, so I don't know that you've ever done a pit stop race before, have you?
I have not done a pit stop race.
So tell us about that. Is that something you're going to have to learn about? I'm told, and I don't know if this is true because we don't know what the length of these races are yet, but obviously it's going to be a length of a race that's going to require at least a stop for gas and probably a rear tire. I don't know if you guys, it sounds like you may have to have a bike that's got a dry brake and a gas can, the full Daytona setup there or not. But obviously it'll be something you guys will practice, but that's further into the season. It's probably not even something that you and your team have talked about yet. Have you?
We've talked about it briefly, and I grew up racing like mini endurance races. I was at the WERA N2 endurance race this year. I've never raced a big bike endurance race before, and I'm super excited about it. I feel like that's something that would play into my skill set, and something that I look forward to spending time trying to do.
Okay, yeah, I know it's a big wrinkle for you to do that this year, but so do you feel like Supersport? I mean, Twins, some of the guys that have moved up from Junior Cup, it's a nice intermediary step. And some people went into Twins Cup last year because there was such an unknown about Supersport. Now it's kind of stabilized. It feels like Supersport this year is going to be a little bit more of a known quantity. For you, I mean, you've ridden Supersport before. It's almost like you sidestepped the Twins Cup a little bit, but do you feel like Supersport is more in line with your pathway to where you eventually want to get in your racing career?
That's hard to say. I think the motorsports industry is a little interesting right now with manufacturers pulling out of the quote unquote super sport bikes. So I don't know what exactly is going to be the step there. But with Yamaha not supporting the super sport class as much and things like that, I'm not sure what would be the better step there. I had an opportunity to race twins and nothing else was really on the table last year. I just wanted to be back in the MotoAmerica paddock. I spent 2 years almost out of it and I missed it. And there was a great opportunity there, as well as Yamaha really wants to put a lot into the R7 program. So that's what brought me into twins and super excited about that. But as a stepping stone, it's a interesting thing. Like I was saying, trying to ride a Twins Cup bike is not how you would race a super sport bike. I really struggled with that that style for myself. You can ride it a lot more like a junior cup bike, a little more on the edge, and racing against some of those guys, it was kind of weird to me. Like they don't know how close they are to crashing, but they're on the limit. And I wasn't willing to put myself in some of those situations like they were. But no, the Twins Cup is definitely no joke. I've said it a couple times this year. I think it's a very underrated class, and there is a lot of support going into it. I know both Aprilia and Yamaha are trying really, really hard from manufacturer side of things to make it happen. And I think it's an amazing class, and I think you will see some really big stars come out of it. And I think some people should be in super sport that are racing in twins right now.
Okay, you're moving back to Supersport, and that also means you're going to be back racing full time against the old man in the motorhome that you drove around the country with. Now, is that something you look forward to? I know. I was it Brainerd. I wasn't going to say did you dirty, but I mean, I think that's where he passed you like on the last lap and maybe at 2 corners from the finish. So,
you know what?
Talk a little bit about racing with Josh and what that means.
You guys brought that up earlier, my 4th place in Brainerd, and like that hurt my heart a little bit when you guys brought that up. I was like, dang it. I knew
that should have been 3rd.
I wouldn't say should have been, but big learning lesson for me. But yeah, racing with the old man, racing in the backyard, riding on bicycles every day, everything's a competition. And having Josh Hayes, like a guy I looked up to my whole life, being there with me every day. I see him drinking Dr. Peppers and Ben and Jerry's, and then he beats me on the race weekend, and I'm just like, gosh, dude, are you serious? He's awesome to have in the paddock and to be racing against. I would say, like, there's no one with his level of experience, and right there, like, another learning lesson. And I gotta say, if I'm honest, like, walking back to the RV, I knew it was going to be a long night for me, hearing about it and everything. And I made a mistake. I left the door open and he snuck right up in there. And let me just tell you, that mistake will never happen again for me. But no, it's awesome to have him, and I can't wait to stack up again. And I just gotta say, he always talks about this big brother thing, like, oh, you can never beat your big brother, and I've kind of lived with it with Ezra and Cameron a little bit. Like, those are my big brothers, I guess you can say, and they're my bros. And going up against them or going up against Josh, like, you look up to these guys and you can't ever beat them that way. You always hold them up on a pedestal. And now I want to look at it from a little different perspective. And let me just tell you, there's nothing more that I want than to beat that old man.
Well, you touched on it right there, Cory, about something I wanted to ask you, and it's you're very close to the Bobier family, and here we have Cameron coming back, and he's going to be in Superbike, And Ezra, I think, is continuing with his program next year, so he'll be on a leader bike as well. It'll be kind of nice to have those guys, all those guys back in the paddock with you full time with on a Suzuki. So you guys will be able to hang out just like old days again, even though you don't live anywhere near those guys anymore. But that's a cool reunion for you guys.
For sure. And Cameron's always great to have in the paddock. I know it's awesome for MotoAmerica for him to be coming back. I'd like to see him spend some more time overseas. He's an absolute talent, and I still feel like he hasn't shown exactly what he has. But, it's always fun having the bros together. And it's going to be a special year, I would say, in MotoAmerica, just with everyone being there. And it's going to be a good time.
I've been thinking about something. Like we all saw Cameron Beaubier go to Europe to race Moto2, and he struggled initially. And I think by the time that he left there, he showed that he was capable of running at the front. He never got that podium. He never got that victory. But I think everybody, with him leaving, I think they all knew that what he was capable of doing. It just, it just didn't fall into place. My question is, you're a young American road racer, and you maybe or maybe not, but since you're a little kid, you've been looking at, I want to race MotoGP, I want to race Moto2, I want to do all this stuff. When you see how difficult it was for somebody like Cameron Beaubier, does it change your outlook on what you think is possible, or does that not come into play?
I mean, it does change my outlook as that being my dream. Like, it just puts things into perspective a little bit. And Cameron and I talked about it all the time. He's like, dude, like, those guys are just so gnarly. And yeah, they are. They're soon to be the best racers in the world. They're on their way to MotoGP. And no, it's a tough field. I feel like there are some things that I have qualities in myself that I feel like I could do things differently or whatever. But of course, I'd like my shot at giving it over there. And like, I raced with SDK, and he's coming through a little bit. And I would say SDK had some big shoes to fill, being Cameron's teammate. He came on strong, even though he had his rookie season was a little bit harder. But like, Cameron is so good, and I feel like he's very underrated. And there are some really cool things there, but you got to do your own thing. And I would say, like, I know with Cameron being over in the World Championship on 125s, and he was 16 in 2009 or something like that. He had a really tough year, and I feel like Cameron going over now, he's still like, oh, the World Championship, I don't know, or MotoAmerica, he's just like, well, I'm going to go have some fun.
Right.
So Cory, I know you're very close, or I know he's not in this country right now, but you have been close in the past with Garrett Gerloff. Have you ever considered the pathway that he took? In other words, just going into World Superbike. I don't mean I mean that is a different pathway to a World Championship. Would that be something that would interest you?
For sure. I see some guys that I raced with in the KTM Cup World Finals and World Supersport, and some guys that I have done pretty well, and it's pretty cool to just see how things evolve over time and see where people go. I'm not saying like, oh, I run up with them. Everyone has a different situation, or people change as years go on. But World Superbike, I think, is becoming more prestigious. There's a lot of competition there, and you guys see Garrett. I think Garrett is doing extremely well. He starts every weekend off very good, and he kind of struggles a little bit to find pace, but look at the guys that he's racing against. They're all phenomenal. And I would love to take my shot anywhere in any World Championship.
Yeah, that's a good attitude to have. You have a similarity this year with Cameron Beaubier in that, so Cameron raced, 2 years, but let's just say this past year, Cameron raced in Moto2 with no electronics. You raced in Twins Cup with no electronics. You raced a little bit in Supersport. You're going to go back to full-time Supersport with electronic interventions on your bike. So you're a good person to ask this. I think Cameron's looking forward to getting back into Superbike, where he can have the electronics help him out with a few things. Do you like electronics on a motorcycle?
Uh, I don't have a whole lot of experience with it. Like my time racing the Yamaha and the ZX6 is really what I have to compare it to. Like last year was my first time really with the team. We sit down and I had a really cool dash. I've never had that before. And they were showing me everything with the telemetry and comparing data, and like I thought it was super super cool. But for the most part, I go with no rider aids. I don't like traction control, and that's how I like to roll things. I like to have a little bit more feel.
Spoken like a true Josh Hayes disciple.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. It's all in the right hand, right wrist. Cory, hey, so we're going to wrap up here, but I want to mention one thing. I'm going to tease something out here, and I want to get your reaction to this too. I think you're aware of this. So this team, Disrupt Racing, who has Hayden Gillum as your teammate, there's a good chance you're actually going to have a teammate in Supersport. There's going to be another rider on that team. We won't say who it is, but there's a good chance you're going to have somebody side by side with you on equal equipment. I don't know that you've ever been on a team where you've had another rider, well, except for when you raced in spec series like KTM or whatever. But I don't think you've ever had a teammate before. Are you? Without giving anything away, because it's going to be announced later if it happens. Do you welcome the idea of having a teammate to maybe share data and comments back and forth about the bike or the track or whatever? Is that something you're going to like?
Of course, I think it's always very beneficial to have someone else to compare and to try different things with and see what the outcome is. Because you have one rider, and you don't know if it's the bike or if it's the rider. Where there you have a little bit more data within just the two of you to go, oh, okay, there's something wrong here or whatever, as well as your teammate's always the first person you want to beat because you guys are on similar equipment. But at the same time, having someone else under the canopy in the atmosphere, Disrupt has an amazing atmosphere. And I'm not sure who my teammate's going to be, but like I said, within the Disrupt atmosphere and the family, it's going to be someone someone fun, and it's going to be someone else that I'm going to be super close with, and it's going to be good.
Yeah, and this rider will be to be determined or to be named later. That's something that Disrupt Racing will announce at some point here. But anyway, we're going to wrap up now. Cory, it's always great to have you on. You've been on a couple times before with us, but it's been about a year since we had you on last time. And every time we talk to you, a lot's transpired between the last time and this time. So thanks for being on with us. It's terrific to talk to you. You sound the same, even though you're in Kansas City. Have fun in the up there in Wisconsin and with your team when you start. I'm sure you're going to be riding and doing some testing. And thank you for being on. And I'm just going to wrap up after this. But any closing thoughts, Cory?
Yeah, thank you for having me. And hey, if you guys want to chat anytime, do this again, I'm all for it. I love talking to you guys.
Hey, make sure you give Sean and I's best to your family.
Yes.
For the holidays. I know your sister just got engaged, which is really exciting.
Yep.
I hope you like the guy. So yeah, happy holidays.
Yeah. And hey, I was just joking with my sister before I got on the phone with you guys. I'm like, oh, Sean and Paul, they love my family more than they love me. So we can have a whole podcast just talking about my family.
Well, we actually could. We were going to do that, but we decided we should talk about motorcycles a little bit.
Yeah. I'm glad we got to talk about them, because to shout out to Emily and your dad and mom as well, Cory. We think a lot of them. But anyway, thanks for being on. And I want to say to the fans, so as of last Friday, our ticket sales are active. Obviously, we've got the schedule out. So hopefully you guys are visiting the website and taking a look at where we're going this year and clicking on those tickets buttons and locking in where you want to be. The cool thing is, if you camp at our rounds, the same place you camped, the same, I guess, spot you camped the previous year is reserved for you for this year if you want to do it, which is kind of a cool feature that we have. But if you don't camp and it's just tickets, you can go there. Just go to our calendar on the website and click on each of those buttons where it says tickets, and you can see Cory Ventura race for Disrupt Racing on a Suzuki, either GSXR 600 or 750. and the team owner, Jesse Wilka, and that's Cory Ventura. And again, thanks for being on with us, Cory.
Yeah, that's my pleasure. Thank you guys.
All right. Have a good holiday.
You too. Happy holiday.